All right, thanks for joining everybody. Thanks for taking out some time out of your busy days. Today, we're going to be covering something that I think all of us are seeing a struggle with, something that's difficult for everybody, and that is attracting and hiring high quality staff. Since the pandemic, we've seen somewhat of a flip in the job market dynamics, and so it's led to us, having a more difficult time finding, replacing, training good staff. Puts a burden on us as proprietors as well as our staff, who have to cover the difference, and leads to higher burnout and higher turnover, which definitely things we don't want to do. So today I wanted to go over some ways to attract and hire some staff to help alleviate that problem. So talk to a couple different staffing agencies and people who are doing well with this to try to extract what we could apply to our own centers and help fix that problem. So let's dive in. So what we're going to cover today: how to reframe your approach, the mindset behind how you recruit, the 3 fundamentals of generating candidates, breaking the process into really 3 steps to see what are you doing well, what needs to be fixed, attracting top tier candidates, so that they're coming to you rather than you always having to chase or go out and find them. So how can we get them to come to us? Then we'll go into quickly multiplying your best employees. How can we take the people who perform the best, show up on time, do the job well, and try to clone them? And then the last one, we'll talk about building the perfect job ad. What do we write? How do we put it out there? How do we get people to come to us and apply? So that's what we'll be covering today. But really quick, before we dive in, I do want you to get a lot out of this. And in order for that to happen, I need your full attention. So if you will, put away your cell phone, or at least silence it, flip it over, put it in a drawer or something, just for the next 30 minutes. Turn off Facebook, exit social media. Because if you are a proprietor and you're serious about building a top-notch staff, then these next 30 minutes will change your life. If you're tired of working 80 hours a week, or your staff burning out, then this half hour is going to significantly help you with that. So just pay attention for a little bit and have a big payoff. And then lastly, if you stay to the end, I have some goodies to hand out. I have our ultimate checklist for digital marketing for bowling centers, our keyword list for the best 65 keywords that help generate customers that you want to be on for pay-per-click as well as SEO, search engine optimization. And then I have our guide on how we added 20,000 a month in revenue using Google and Facebook. So stay to the end, and I will be sharing those as well. So I'll go over this quickly. I don't want to dwell too much on this, but who am I and why should you listen to me? I've spent the last 12 years in sales and marketing, primarily for small businesses. Pretty much for the most part, it's all focused on small businesses. We've worked with a lot of successful proprietors over the years, so we've learned what works in the industry. Bowling has been our greatest success story. So I've worked with a lot of different industries, and bowling took off. We saw the most value there, so we decided to double down. And I even partnered with one of our clients to open a new center in West Virginia. So a little bit about my background and why it might be worth listening to what we have. And again, I worked with lots of different centers in the area. That's the gentleman that I partnered with in West Virginia. We've seen what works across. We have a podcast where we interview other successful providers as well as industry figures who talk to a lot of other centers, and we're able to draw those lessons and share with you today. So I like to start off with a question. And this is actually a question that I ask all of the different guests that we have come on. What's your biggest challenge today? And type a 1 in the chat if staffing and recruiting employees is your biggest challenge today. Go ahead, just type a 1 in the chat. Exactly. If this is your biggest challenge, you are not alone. This is definitely the number 1 challenge. That whenever I ask people the question what their biggest challenge is, it's always coming down to staffing and recruiting. I want to ask, why is it so difficult? Why can't we get more people coming in? It wasn't always like this. So what changed? Why is it like this now? So that gets to the point about the Great Resignation, which is really just a story of supply and demand. So before, you have a greater supply of candidates than demand, which is the jobs. So it's easy to get people to hire because they want a job and there's not that many jobs to go around. But if you inverse that, which is where we are now, and you have more jobs than candidates, then you got to compete for candidates. There's more jobs than people, and that's for a variety of factors. We can save that maybe for another lesson for the day. It's not just people sitting on their couches. There's a lot of factors of it. People leaving the workforce, whether for retirement, women going to take care of their children, people moving up to take over those spaces and leaving openings at the bottom. There's a lot of factors, but in the end, all that really matters to us is that they are less candidates than there are jobs. So what are we going to do about that? Let's talk about 5 ways to stack the odds in your favor. How can we compete against other people who are going to that same labor pool, labor market, and how can we outcompete them to bring the candidates to us? So I like to come from a high level and say, what are the 5 things or 5 areas that we can really focus on to outcompete in the job market? The 5 that I have here are reframing your approach, refining your hiring process, repositioning your brand, recruiting your current staff, and revamping your job ads. So like I mentioned at the top, what we're going to cover, those are the 5 things. And if you do just one of them, you'll see a big increase in your staffing and recruiting. But if you do all of them, you will not have a problem with that anymore. So this is how you take care of it. So the first one is reframing your approach. We need to give the staffing and recruiting process the seriousness and the attention and resources that it deserves. A lot of you probably do some sort of marketing, probably not as much as you should, but you do some degree of marketing and you have a little bit of reverence for that. But it needs to be done. It's something you put some resources to or time employees do. We need to do the same thing for staffing and recruiting. So if you think about marketing for your customers and trying to bring them in, we need to market for our staff and try to put resources to bring them in. So it's not just something where you toss up some job ads and people will apply and it'll take care of itself. The manager interviews them and hires. It's not like that anymore. It's a competitive market and we have to treat it that way. To say, I'm going to do what it takes and put in a little more effort to get that awesome staff. And let's think about it. It's really, compared to a customer, an employee is going to make you a lot more money on a per person basis than one customer is. So we should really be treating them that way and putting in what it takes to get this job done. I think that's probably the first thing. Is just historically, you could just put up a job ad and someone would come in and apply and that was that. But that's not the case anymore. And I think just recognize that is part of the battle. So that's the first one. Second one is refining your hiring process. So fishing in better ponds, get away from going to Indeed, Craigslist, or just posting something on Facebook of its own, and just trying to get in front of the people who don't have a job. Like, why don't they have a job? Let's think about that. They're probably not, there's a chance that they're just in between jobs, but how many great employees are really ever between jobs? So the people who are sitting on their couch applying are probably not the people you want to get in your business. So let's find ways to get in front of people who have jobs and are good employees and find a way to bring them to us. So I have a little statistic here that 1 in 4 Americans were not searching for their current job when they found it. So they weren't even looking. 25% of people, the job they have now, they weren't even looking for it. So let's just keep that in mind. How can we get more of those people? 25%, that's a huge percentage of people out there. Social networks account for 80% of where people look for their job search, or 80% of them at some point use social networks. So that's where we should be. Let's get in front of people who are not looking, show them how great your position is. You goes back to that marketing from the last one. Sell your job against the job they currently have. And now you just open up an entirely new pool of candidates who are probably better than the ones you're getting today. So that's refining your hiring process as far as fishing in better ponds. The other piece is the actual process. Once they have some kind of indication of interest, how quick do you get back in touch with them? How easy is it to schedule an interview? Is there like 1 hour a week that you're open, or are you pretty flexible and can meet anytime? Some people are better than others. Making it as easy as possible for them to get in there, as well as really good communication. So you see that not hearing back after a interview or about receiving their application is a huge frustration for people. So just over communicate. We send reminders before, we send things after, as soon as they apply, like keeping in touch the whole way so you don't lose them, because when they're interested and then when they're not hot, they're cold and it's gone. So how do we keep them hot and interested that whole time through the whole process all the way until their first day? It says that the average position takes 42 days to get filled, but good candidates only have to wait 10 days to find a new job. So how quickly are we following up with them, and how tight is our process? So really tightening up our process, making sure there's no holes where people come in and say, hey, I'd be willing to work here, and then they fall off in between the. That's another piece that we really want to look at, is lay out the whole process from when they apply to when you follow up with them, schedule the interview, remind them about the interview, conduct the interview, follow up on the interview. That whole thing needs to be pretty tight. And then the last thing is just communicating with them as far as what is the job entails. 90% of employers think they do a good job of educating people about the role, but only 30% of the candidates feel that's the case. So just keep that in mind. Killer communication. So I just want to take a break here, a pause, just because throwing a lot at you, and I actually want you to step away today with some takeaways as well as some practical applications of this stuff. So really quick, just throw in the chat a couple takeaways, or what's your biggest lesson so far? What have you learned? Just take a minute and put it in the chat. Let's see what we got. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Reframing it to give things, recruiting, the importance of it is definitely one. Yeah, I was surprised to see that many people got a job that weren't even looking, 25%. Yeah, I was really surprised as well when I first saw that. Yeah, it's not just people. Yeah, I see he's saying that the shortage isn't just people collecting. It's actually a lot of factors. Yeah, it's actually a really great article on the Harvard Business Review that goes into depth of all the different factors behind it. But it's really interesting stuff. And yeah, people want to say it's just people on the couch collecting unemployment, but there is a lot more to it. Great. Really quick, also just your one takeaway. Now write down one thing you're going to take away from this and implement into your center. I'll give you 30 seconds a minute to go through that. Yeah, we can cover that after. No worries. All right. Yeah, we're going to get to the job ads in a sec, towards the end. Okay. All right. So we got our first takeaway. So we're done with 2 out of the 5. Let's go on to number 3, which is repositioning your brand. This is a cool one. When I first started out, I was very much so of the mindset about like direct response and sales, and what is like a clear connection between an action and a response. And as I get a little bit further into marketing, I see that the branding is actually a huge aspect. Early on, I thought, it's woo-woo, or it's an easy way to hide behind not getting results. But in the long run, there is a point to it. Branding is what people think of you when they think of your business. And branding, the whole idea behind branding is, how do you influence how people think about your company? That's really all a brand is, their impression of you in their heads. The number one advantage you can have when it comes to staffing and recruiting is to become a destination as the place to work. Like, people want to work for you. Another way of saying it is you're the cool place to work for. Then people start to come to you. Do you want to work at something that you're excited to tell your friends and family about, or something that you're embarrassed about? That goes a long way. Because let's face it, it's tough to compete on wages for a lot of these other businesses, warehouses, Amazon, places like that. It's tough to compete on wages, but we can win here. People like to give fun and provide fun to other people. It's much more enjoyable. So we don't have to pay as much, but we do need to paint that picture of a great workplace environment, creating fun. Your customers are there to have fun. So if we can make it fun for your employees, they're going to love working there. They're going to tell friends, and people come in, they're going to be like, oh man, this place is awesome. I'd love to work here. They see how much fun the employees are having, and they want to work there too. It's in your social media, whatever marketing you're doing, just making it look like it's a lot of fun and a family and a place that you'd want to be there. It's a huge advantage. It doesn't cost you anything, but it's a really big advantage over the rest of the competition. So that's number 3, is repositioning your brand to be magnetic and get people to want to work for you. That's the next one. All right. So the number 4 is recruiting your current staff. So everybody's heard the birds of a feather flock together. This is true when it comes to employees too. So if you have a good employee, chances are the people they hang out with, and it's not always true, but more often than not, the people that they hang out with are probably good employees too. And your employees probably want to, spend more time with their friends. It, adds to that having fun, good work environment, especially if they're hanging out with their friends. All you have to do is say, do you want to work with your buddy? If you know someone who's a good employee and would fit in here, then you can incentivize them to come in and apply. And you don't have to pay them up front. Obviously, there's got to be some metrics, whether it's attendance or tenure hitting a certain amount. You just space that out. You could do maybe something up front, a small amount, and then most of it is on the back end. I have here an example of $500 after 3 months and 30 shifts worked. This is just an example. 500 might be a lot, but you could, if whatever it's worth it to you to get someone good in here and not have to go through all that process. Because how much is it worth it to you that you're working 80 hours a week and you could pull some of that back? Or your staff, you're ripping through staff because they're getting burned out. What is that really worth it to you? Think about that. Maybe $500 isn't so much when you put it that way. But yeah, this is just a great way to get more people, build that family, and get your staff to recruit for you, to find good people, because they probably know them and they're going to be able to sell the job well, especially if they like working for you. So this is another great way to do that. So let's take another break. Every 2 major points, I like to take a break. Let's write down the action items that you're going to, how you're going to implement these. So what can you do to make your brand more attractive? Throw it in the chat if you want, or just write it down, that's fine. And then what incentive are you going to offer? Throw down maybe a monetary amount, or maybe a gift card or a pizza party, or it doesn't have to be money. It could be whatever motivates your staff. But what would be an incentive that you would offer? And then maybe some of those checkpoints, like tenure, amount of shifts work, or how long they've been there. Go ahead, throw it in the chat. Yeah, no, I like that one too. Right. Yeah, even just, how you put yourself out there on social media, good photography, stuff like that, make it cool. Pop culture references. There's a center we work with that does a lot of Big Lebowski references, things like that. It gives, shows your personality. It's not just, it drives me crazy when people use stock photography, because everyone knows that's not you, and it's just sterile is a good way to put it. So yeah, I like that. Great. Okay. Yeah. This whole thing is about delivering value, making sure that you get something out of it. So make sure you're writing these down. Even if you're not putting it in the chat, just think about right now, because you're going to forget once you leave. Things come up, obviously. Right now, what are you going to do to implement these? You become more attractive, and incentives you offer. So I'll give you 30 more seconds or so, and then we'll move on. All right, let's keep moving here. The last one, this is the one I promised we'd get to eventually, is the job ads. So step 1 for effective job ads is to get someone's attention, as I like to call stop the scroll. So get them to stop scrolling through and read what you have here. 51% of respondents attracted to job postings with visual elements. So pictures, video. Nobody wants just text. When you're scrolling through it, you're not going to stop there to read the text. You need an image. And I love these, and we'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide, but the emojis really stand out, because what other job ads have that kind of stuff? So really having something that sticks out. This one is to give you the story behind it, this one's from the trucking agency or staffing agency that I talked to, who does this all day long. They get thousands of candidates, so they really know how to get it done. And this was an example of their job ad. So you can see when this pops up in someone's feed, they're much more likely to stop and read it, especially if they are a driver. They notice that stuff. So step number 2 is getting more applications. So these are, tips that you want to do in your job ads so that people actually apply. Because if you don't do it and you get less respondents, obviously you're not going to get the people in there that you want. So list your salary as specific as you can, because if you think about it from their perspective, why do they want to take a chance to go through an application and interview and all that hassle just to find out the job is not what they wanted it to be? So just be upfront with it. You can do a range, but keep the range tight. Tell them what it is. There's no reason to hide. And the next one you want to do is for Indeed and Facebook. They make up 90% of the applicants for the social media channels. So those are really the big 2. Craigslist, Indeed, those are decent, but really is where we really want to get in front of more people. Because Indeed, people are actively looking, whereas Facebook, they might not be actively looking, and that's that pool that we were talking about. The next one is to keep your job postings short. So people don't want to read a book when they're applying. Keep it precise, hit the highlights, some big things that are going to convince them to take the job: weekly pay, if they get free food, free bowling, family and friends discount. Those types of things really help sell the job, because at the end of the day, we're selling against all the other job applications. Include those items, but don't go on too long. The next one is a little bit more about selling the role. So include the titles, differentiators. Who wants to be an associate versus an ambassador? Like little things like that add up. When people go and they tell their friends, like, hey, what are you up to these days? Who wants to say, I'm an associate? Not that many. Versus an ambassador, it just sounds a little cooler. It's an easy thing to do. It doesn't cost you anything, but these little details matter. Another one is growth opportunities available. If people are going to invest time in a job, they want to know that it's going to pay off long term. So including things like growth opportunities available really helps to show them what they could do long term. It also gets them thinking long term with you to say, hey, this is something I want to do for a year or 2 years. rather than, 6 weeks. So that's an easy one. Obviously, you have to have that, but give people a path or a potential path to be able to grow with you. And then anything else that you do, include benefits if the pay is good. Like I said, you're selling this job, so anything you can put in there. So then, yeah, just to recap: attention grabbing headline, short description, include as many selling points as you can. Requirements: keep it brief. Don't go into the full duties and responsibilities. Use the emojis, especially for something like bowling where it's about fun. People like to see that. It gets their attention and it's different. You stick out. And then lastly, use the images, or even better, the video. So make sure to include those, and your responses will go through the roof. Your spend will go a lot further, and you'll be able to get a bigger pool to hire from. So then the last one for the action items: how are you going to implement these? Take a second, write it down. Why would someone want to take a job at your center? If they're only working for a paycheck, there's probably a problem. They're going to come to you for the paycheck and they'll leave you for the paycheck. So think about really why people want to work for you and why they'd want to continue working for you. And then the next action item is to just write out your job ad. We will share a template at the end. If you want, just reach out, email me. I'll send it to you, but we'll send a template for different positions and you can fill in your information. But think about what you would include in your. All right, so you made it to the end. Here are the goodies as promised. If you head to toplinegrowth.pro/reward, you just fill out your email. We'll send it over to you. Got the checklist, the keyword list, and the guide to adding 20,000 a month in revenue. So head over there, enjoy those. Hopefully you get a lot out of them. We put work into them and we know it works. Enjoy. And then lastly, this is something we do with lots of different centers. So if you want to talk to us directly, get a little more one-on-one attention, then just head to toplinegrowth.pro/schedule. We'll get you on the calendar and help you identify some of these wicker points or where we can help and how you can get fully staffed. So thanks for hopping on, everybody. And we'll send a recording out after this if you need to get some slides or came in late. But otherwise, have a great rest of your week, and I'll talk to you next time. Thanks.